My name is Liam, an addict and alcoholic. We're going to open this meeting with a moment of silence for those still sick and suffering, both in and out of here, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. So, first of all, thank you for letting me come. It's always an honor to come and share. And I've known Donovan and Nicole for a very long time. I've been in some way, shape, or form an ancillary character in the Potter House for pretty much its existence. So I like to come up and spend some time with him and get him to buy me lunch, that kind of thing. So we're going to study how it works today. We're going to do this a hair different than maybe what you might be thinking. We're not going to do the entire chapter. We're specifically going to talk about the first 3 pages. The reason why I was asking earlier if you've been to an AA meeting or not is because this is the same reading that they read at the beginning of every AA meeting that most people don't listen to and most people don't pay attention to because they're too busy playing with their phone or checking out this new relationship across the way that they're getting ready to destroy instead of paying attention to how it works. Because this is how it works. And this is a true story as well. The first 2 years that I was in recovery, I did not go to AA. I went to CA, which CA is Cocaine Anonymous. We use the 12 steps. We use the big book, but in our meeting, we just talk about everything. We're not a singleness of purpose. If you have an issue, there's a CA meeting here. It's great. Yeah, I'm sure if you haven't been to yet, he'll drag you to it soon, and you'll probably enjoy it because it's the same thing, but it's different. It's a little more loose, So the first 2 years that I was in recovery, I did CA exclusively because there was enough CA to go around. And then my sponsor was like, look, man, you need to start going to AA. You need to branch out. You need to, build a network, all that. I said, okay, cool. Very first AA meeting that I ever went to, they started reading how it works. I pulled my big book out, turned to page 58 to follow along. And the guy sitting next to me leans over and says, oh, man, that's in the book?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's in the book. Like, this is important. It really is. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go through how it works line by line. And we're going to talk about what it means and what it's for and why it's here and why they read it at the beginning of every AA meeting in the world. You with me? Mm-hmm. So we're going to start on page 58. Chapter 5, how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. We're going to stop right there for a minute. Because the first thing that we're going to talk about is this word we. Who's we?
The addicts.
All of us.
Those are both correct answers. In this particular instance, though, the we are the 100 men and women who wrote this book. The we are the 100 men and women who wrote the instructions to getting and staying sober. Now let's do a little history lesson real quick. This book was printed and written between 1935 and 1939. It was published in 1939. Before this book was written and printed, the options for recovery came in 3 forms. The first one was long-term convalescence. You were going to go away for a long time. You can tour around the grounds and like what you see, but you can't leave. You're just going to go away. The next option was lobotomy. They were literally going to remove a piece of your brain and hope that maybe fix the problem. And the last option was electroshock therapy. They were going to hook about 75,000 volts up to you and do a little mind erase type action, see if that works. And here's the kicker with all 3 of those options. Those options were available to you if you had the money, which most people didn't have the money. And so they were just stuck until these 100 men and women found another way. They found a solution. And they wrote this book. And it's really important to understand that. These are the instructions to getting and staying sober written by 100 people who found a way that no one else had found previously. When you see the word we, you're talking about the original founders, the ones who found a new way. And it's important to understand that. They're us. You're correct. They're us. But they're the first ones. Rarely have we seen any person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. What is our path? Our path is this program. It's these steps. It's this book, right? So what they're saying is that they haven't seen too many people not have good results when they follow the instructions written in this book. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. So there's a instruction in there, right? I got to get honest. I got to get honest with me before I can get honest with you. Because I don't know about you, but before I got here, I probably wasn't honest with anyone, much less myself. But I had to finally admit to myself, and it talks about this on page 30, I had to fully concede to my innermost self that I had a problem. And when I came into 12-step recovery, it started with making a phone call that I was told to make to someone who possibly could help me. And I actually got honest with that person. I picked up the phone and I called him, and he picked up the phone, and I said, look, man, I've got a problem with drugs and alcohol, and I don't know what to do about it, and I heard maybe you can help me. And that was the first time in over a decade that I'd gotten honest about what was going on with anyone. And he started helping me. He started talking to me about real recovery, about the solution, about the 12 steps. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Now, for your new folks, I want to be clear about something, and the veterans in here can tell you this. This does not mean that you need to walk around with a billboard that's got a list of all of your problems and all of your mistakes on it. That's not what we're talking about here. You're not going to go on YouTube tomorrow and do your inventory in live stream. Right? That's not what we're talking about here. But somebody has to know. There's got to be one person who knows. There's got to be one person that you trust enough that's not a family member or not a friend or not anybody that's directly associated with you, which is what we call a sponsor, that knows. If my life was this table, there has to be one person that everything is on the table. There's got to be. Because if not, then what that means is I've got a secret. Because I'm telling you 95%, and I'm telling you 90%, and I'm telling you 95%, and I'm hiding something. Something's hidden. Something's under the table. Something I don't want to talk about. Secrets kill guys like me. Secrets kill people like us. Because that secret starts eating around in my skull. And either it makes me crazy or it starts convincing me that, well, I have other secrets too. I don't have to tell everybody everything. Somebody's got to know. Because if they know, then they can help you. They can talk to you because they know the deal, right? But if they don't know everything, then how can they help you, right? So again, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that you've got to tell everybody, but you got to tell somebody, okay? Their chances are less than average. These people who can't be honest, their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. I've lost count of how many people that I've met who've come into the 12 steps and they're on half the PDR. They got a list of prescriptions tall as me, and they helped for a little while, but then they started doing the 12 steps. They started doing real recovery. They started turning their lives towards something different and better. And all of a sudden, one by one, they just started stop taking all those medications. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not trying to tell you not to take. I'm not doing any of that. But I'm just telling you, I've seen multiple times where this here alleviated some of that. That's kind of a nice thing, Because in here, we don't talk about replacement stuff. We talk about God and the steps. We don't talk about other kinds of stuff, Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you're ever given the opportunity to tell your story to a group of folks, that's the format. That's the blueprint. What we used to be like when I was out there running and gunning. What happened. I took the steps, found God, and got sober. And what life is like now. And life's really good. And if you talk to anybody who's been here 7 months or 50 days or whatever, they're going to tell you, man, life's a lot better than it was the day I walked in the door, bro. And that's something else that's about this book and about recovery. You're new, right? You've been here like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, right? Life looked a certain way the day you walked in the door. Give it a week and it's going to start to look different. And then give it 30 days and it's going to start to look different. You've been here 7 months now, right? Life looks a lot different than it did 7 months ago, right? Couldn't have even planned and predicted that. Nobody could have convinced you that whatever you got going on now wasn't, right? Like it's different. And that's what's so interesting about this book. I bet you when you read this book now, something hits you that didn't hit you before.
I get something new out of it
Right. Every
I
time I read the book, I've been reading the book for 14 years. And every time I read the book, I see something that I didn't see before because my life changed, right? My perspective has changed. The problems that I had a year ago, I don't have now, you know? And, you know, the things that were going on in my life now that were wildly important a year ago aren't nearly as important, right? It's amazing. It's amazing. And so I pull this book out and I read something and I get something different from it. This is a textbook that's meant to be studied. If you count the forwards and the doctor's opinion and Dr. Bob's Nightmare, there's 200 pages roughly, and there's not a single wasted word. We can have meetings on one paragraph for an hour with 30 people. That's how much is in this book. It's meant to be studied. If you have decided you want what we have, it's talking directly to the reader here, right? If you have decided that you want what we, who's we? The 100 men and women who wrote the instructions to getting and staying sober. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it. Now, I was willing to go to any length to do what the dope man told me to do, right? There's a line, matter of fact, in We Agnostics, there's a line in We Agnostics that says wholeheartedly, right? I was wholeheartedly willing to meet whatever requirements the dope man had. I was wholeheartedly willing to meet whatever requirements the bartender had. I was willing to go to any length to do what those people needed me to do to get what I wanted. If you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. What steps? The 12 steps. At some of these we balked, right? The steps are right up there on the wall. How many times did you walk into a meeting and you read them steps, you'd be like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't know about that one. Well, maybe I can do some of that, right? Right? At some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. I don't know about you, but I tried to stop drinking and stop using 1,000 times. I tried church, and I'm not knocking church. I tried church. I tried, changing people, places, and things, and I tried all of those other options, and none of them worked for me. And the book will tell you that AA does not have a monopoly on recovery. The 12 steps are not a monopoly on recovery. There are 1,000 ways to get sober. Most of us try the other 999 ways before we get here. And if you get here, that means those 999 ways did not work. That's what that means. With all the earnestness at our command, and again, this is the 100 men and women who wrote the instructions are talking to the reader. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. We beg of you to be fearless and thorough because there's a lot of fear involved in what we're doing here when you ain't got sober, right? Don't sit here and tell me that you ain't afraid. I know you are because I've been there, right? Some of us tried to hold on to our old ideas and the result was nil until we let go. Absolutely. Part of this is the idea that whatever I thought was real and true, I've got to put that aside for a minute. Ultimately, what I need to do right now is follow directions. The last person who needs to be running my life and my recovery is me, right? Because me running my life and my recovery got me to a place to where my best option was to come to a place like the Potter House after I got out of jail. Let's just be very clear about that, right? See, that's the thing. My best thinking didn't get me into recovery. My best thinking did not get me to a meeting. My best thinking got me to a bar. My best thinking got me to the dope man's house. My best thinking put dope in my hands. That's what it did. It was somebody else's best thinking who said, man, you need to go to a meeting. Man, you probably, maybe you want to call this guy, right? It was somebody else's best thinking who did that. Tell me I'm wrong, right?
You're absolutely
Right? It's wild. So the last thing that I need to be doing, I need to cast aside all of those old ideas and try something new. I need something different, right? Remember that we deal with alcohol or cocaine or heroin or fentanyl or meth, right? Pick one. The disease doesn't care. It's really important to understand that. The disease doesn't care. The disease doesn't care who I am or where I came from or who my daddy is or how much money I got. The disease doesn't care about any of that stuff. The disease doesn't care how I identify myself or what my label is. The disease doesn't care about any of that. The disease cares that I care about that. It's going to use that against me. The disease plays for keeps. That's what it does. Remember that we deal with alcohol. Cunning, baffling, powerful, right? Cunning. I'll stay sober. I won't drink and use for a week or two, and things get a little better, and the heat's off for a moment. I feel a little better. Start thinking, well, maybe I, right? If you've been here more than 24 hours, they've already been talking to you. Maybe I. No. Baffling. What happened? I was doing so good, right? How many times have you been doing so good? And then all of a sudden, right? How many times you've been doing so good? You were doing so good. What happened? 1,000 phone calls and 4 days later, what happened? Powerful. It's powerful. The disease is powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. Again, the we who wrote the instructions to getting and staying sober, without help, it is too much for us. Later on in the book, in the back to Dr. Bob's Nightmare, it will specifically say, if you think you can beat this game alone, I feel sorry for you. That's what it says. But there is one, capital zero, capital O, one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. In the original manuscript, it says you must find him now. Right? I must find him now. May you find him now. The only thing is a spiritual solution. That's the only thing that's going to help somebody like us. Half measures availed us nothing. Half measures availed us nothing. I love that line. So let me put this premise to you. Let's pretend for a minute when you were out there running and gunning, if you got 6 hours of sleep at night. Let's pretend for a minute that we got 6 hours of sleep at night when we were out there running and gunning, right? That means you spent 18 hours a day chasing after drugs and alcohol. For what you did, right? This book will tell you that if you're willing to give the same amount of effort to that, you can change. This can change. You can find God and you can change, because half measures of I got to give everything that I was going after drugs and alcohol to this program, to a new life, to a change, to something different. But if I do, it'll work. It'll work. We asked his protection. There's a prayer. God, I'm asking you to protect me and care with complete abandon. That's such a huge word. The word abandon is used in this book 4 times, and every time it's almost right next to the word God. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. It says that, right? We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. I am abandoning the way that I used to live my life, and I am going after something new and different. I'm going after this. This is a commitment. This is I'm doing something here. I'm for the first time in my life. And then here it says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. Now, what did it say in the previous page? The path and the program. Here's the path and the program. Right here, these 12 steps are the path and the program. These are the instructions by way of getting and staying sober. Everything else in the book is an explanation of these instructions, right? Step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and then there's a dash right there, that our lives had become unmanageable. And I always like to put this to my new guys when I'm working with them. What's the most important word, or what's the most important part, what's the most important part in step 1?
Admitting.
I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but I want to give you a different idea.
Admitting that we were powerless.
It's that dash. You see that dash at the end of the line?
No, I've always wondered why that was cool.
So what's that doing is it's separating two completely different statements. Basically, what we've got here is step 1A and step 1B. Step 1A, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. That's the allergy and the obsession. And they've been bombing that into you since you walked in the door, right? The allergy and the obsession. Once I start drinking and using, I can't stop drinking and using, right? That's the allergy. And the obsession. If I do stop drinking and using, I can't stop thinking about drinking and using until eventually I go start drinking and using again. That's powerless, right? And look, here's the deal. I could walk into any room in the world, especially even when I was out there running and gunning, I could walk into me and be like, yeah, dude, I got a problem with drugs and alcohol. Like, it's kind of easy to admit that. But then step 1B, that our lives had become unmanageable. That spiritual malady, right? Page 52, the bedevilments. We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were a prey to misery and depression. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. My sponsor turned that into a series of questions. Lee, when you're out there drinking and using, are you having trouble with personal relationships? Yeah. Hey, Lee, when you're not drinking and using, are you having trouble with personal relationships? Yeah. Boy, isn't that strange. Lee, when you're drinking and using, are you full of fear? When you're not drinking and using, you're full of fear. It's amplified. Can you control your emotional nature? It depends on how much drugs and alcohol I got. Can you control your emotional nature when you're not getting high? Hell no. I'm all over the map. I'm a roller coaster. And see, here's the deal with, that's the best that I can do. The best that I can do would be in this place to where I'm losing my mind. And everybody's going, well, you're just doing so good. We're so glad you're doing so great. I'm so happy for you. Go away. Go away. I'm losing my mind. I can't handle this. I got to go. That's powerless. That's unmanageable. There's no God in that. That's the spiritual malady. That's unmanageable, that our lives have become unmanageable. The best that I can do is be in a place where I'm going to go burn it all down again. Because that's all I know. And then step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. What's the most important word in step 2?
Sanity?
Yes, ma'am. Why?
Because we were insane.
Yes, ma'am. Living in step 1 is crazy. Think about that for a minute, right? I'm going to consciously choose to go and live that life because that makes sense. That's nuts, right? That is crazy. And again, there is no God in that. But here's the kicker. Until I can accept that, I'm not asking anybody for any help, much less a God that I can't see. And seeing my sponsor put me on that too early on. He said, look, man, here's the deal. You can take God right now and you can chuck him out the window. If you can't do what I'm telling you to do, when I'm sitting here right in front of me and you can see me and you can hear me and I know how to stay sober and you don't, how are you ever going to listen to a God that you can't see? Okay. Yeah. You got me. And so then I start coming to believe this idea that maybe this power greater than myself, God, call it whatever you want, right? Donovan loves this. God, Allah, Buddha, Minerva, Zeus, Jupiter, Shiva, Ra, Yahweh, Jehovah, Father Time, Mother Earth, Spirit of the universe, pick one.
Jesus.
For thousands of years, billions of people have been seeking a higher power, and they seemingly have had really good lives. I'm in hell right now. My life is hell right now. Maybe, just maybe, there's something out there that's bigger than me that can work. Maybe. Especially when I'm sitting in front of a group of people right now who are telling me, dude, it worked for me. So that leads me into step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God as we understood him. The most important part of this is the word decision. I'm going to make this conscious choice to go in this new direction. I've spent my life pouring drugs and alcohol and money and jobs and women and status and stuff and relationships and cars and all these things, pouring it all inside of me, trying to make myself feel better. And none of it worked because I woke up the next morning and I hated what I saw in the mirror if I looked in the mirror. Because ultimately, let's be clear about why we're here. We're here because we want to feel better, and the drugs and alcohol aren't working anymore. That's why we're here. We're here because we want to feel better. And I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. I'm consciously choosing to go in this new direction, to go in God's direction. That's the direction that I'm going in, because I've never done that before and nothing else worked. That's how I got here. And then step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Now it's time to get honest. Now it's time to really get honest. I'm going to write on paper how I got here. How did I get here? And I'm going to put on paper all the people that I'm mad at. That's the easy part. And then I'm going to put on paper all the things that I did wrong. I did something wrong. I'm confused. And then I'm going to put on paper all my fears, because I walked in the door saying, I ain't afraid of nothing. And I'm afraid of everything. Matter of fact, one of the things that kept me out of the rooms for all those years is because I was walking to a room full of people that I didn't know, and they were going to know. They were going to know. I couldn't handle that. And then I wrote down on paper all of my relationships, right? All of my sex conduct, right? Which people are terrified of that too. But we all have issues in there, and that's okay. And then I'm going to do that and get honest about how I got right here. And I want to be clear about something. When you read step 4, when you get to step 4, you're stuck on step 4, aren't you? No. You're stuck on step 4. The book does not say complete and correct. You're not supposed to get step 4 right. That is not your job.
Okay.
The book says thorough and honest. That's what it says. There is an expectation that you're going to wake up in 6 months and go to the store and run into somebody that wasn't on your 4-step that needed to be there, and you're going to see him and feel some kind of way, and immediately pick up the phone and call your sponsor and be like, look, and immediately, and I don't know, I fully expect that. We all have blackouts. That's fine. But this inventory is your opportunity to turn over every known stone. If you know it needs to be talked about and you don't write it on paper, then that means you're unwilling to do it. And that's a secret, and that'll kill you. You with me?
Yes, sir.
And then step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Now I'm going to go and tell somebody all this stuff. And look, everybody has a different experience with step 5. I want to be very clear. I'm not going to pretend to tell you that I was saved, but man, I was a lot lighter when I walked out of there. Man, I was a lot lighter. I had finally talked about some stuff that I just never talked about before. And I'd finally talked about it with somebody else who didn't turn around and beat me for it. Because I was terrified that I was going to be just ostracized, that I was just going to be destroyed, that somebody was just going to, they didn't do that. They didn't judge me. Step 5 is not a court trial. Let's be very clear about that. You are not on trial in step 5. It's designed to free you. And the book implores us, the 100 men and women who wrote the instructions to getting and staying sober implore us to do this, because if we don't, we won't be free. And later on, the book actually specifically says, we know God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And it's impossible to do that without a thorough step 4 and 5. You got to get honest. And that leads us into step 6 and step 7, and this is where things really start to change. The miracle starts to happen here. It says we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, right? So I'm ready to go and have a conversation with God. I'm going to talk to God. And that's a miracle, because when I walked in on step 1, I was broken and I was hopeless. And if I talked to God at all, it was, hey man, please let that guy get here soon. And 6 steps later, now I'm talking to God and I'm saying, hey man, without you today, I'm going to feel like I'm not good enough. Hey man, without you today, I'm going to be afraid that people don't like me and love me. And I'm not going to be able to take care of myself. And I'm not going to be able to, and I'm going to be afraid that I won't have enough money and I'm going to be alone and nobody's going to be around. I'm going to be afraid. I don't want to feel that way anymore. Without you, that's how I'm going to feel. With you, maybe, just maybe, you can take all that stuff. I don't want to lie to people anymore. I want to be accountable. I want to be responsible. I want to be there for my family. Right? Without you, I haven't been able to do that. With you, I've been starting to do that, and I want to keep doing that. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. That 6 steps later, I'm now talking to God about what really matters. And the more that we do that, the better we feel and the better our life is. And those folks who've been here for long enough that they've gotten to that, they'll tell you that's the truth. They will absolutely tell you that's the truth. Tell me I'm wrong. I ain't wrong, right? It's a miracle. It's amazing. And then in step 7, we humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. God, I'm asking you today to help me. I'm just asking you today to help me. And that leads us into steps 8 and 9. Made a list of persons that we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Now we're going to go do the amends, right? The dreaded amends. I want to be clear about something. If you spend enough time in recovery, and I think probably you're the veteran that would know this more than anyone else, we lose people at 3 places. We lose them at step 1 because they're not ready. We lose them at step 4 because they're not willing. And we lose them at step 9 out of pure, unadulterated fear. It is terrifying to go back to these people that we know we harmed and say things like, what I did to you was wrong. It was wrong of me to steal from you. It was wrong of me to ask you to come and bail me out of jail. I'm sorry that I was so cavalier with a life that you worked so hard to give me. Right? But it is the most exhilarating and freeing thing that we can do, because then we start walking around with our heads high. And again, the book implores us to do this. It is the most important thing that we can do besides the inventory. Like, we surrender, we do the work, and then we go have real conversations with people. That's what we do. And it's amazing. If you haven't, you've done it. If you haven't done it, you don't know what it's like, but I'm telling you, on the other side, I'm not afraid of who's going to call me when I wake up in the morning if the phone works. I'm not afraid of that anymore. It's amazing. And then that leads us into 10, 11, and 12. And I want to be clear about something here. Steps 1 through 9 get me sober. And then steps 10, 11, and 12 keep me sober. And if you've spent enough time in recovery and if you've gone to enough meetings, at some point somebody's thrown the words "just for today" into a meeting, right? And they kind of sort of lob it from the back of the room like it's a mic drop moment because they're so spiritual and there's no context at all. It drives me insane. Let me be very clear. 10, 11, and 12 are just for today. These are the instructions that keep me sober today. Let's go through them. It says, continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it, right? I'm going to continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear when these crop up, because they're all coming at once, right? I'm going to say a prayer. I'm going to call my sponsor. I'm going to talk to someone. I'm going to make amends, and then I'm going to turn my thoughts to someone that I can help. Those are the instructions to do step 10. The goal of step 10 is to keep me sober in a moment. Right? And think about what your sponsor told you when you first came in. Hey, before you push the big red button and quit your job and leave the Potter house and go down the street and change your cell phone number and leave town and throat punch the boss on the way out the door, maybe, just maybe, you ought to give me a call. Imagine that, right? Maybe, just maybe. See, the idea is that this will help me get and stay sober in this moment, right? I've got a situation going on. I'm not happy. I don't know what's going on. I'm uncomfortable, right? And what did I used to do when I was uncomfortable? Run, hide, get high. Run, hide, right? That was what I used to do, and I don't want to do that anymore. And so I'm going to do this instead. That's what step 10 is for. Step 10 is designed to keep me sober in this moment. And the book promises me, it guarantees me that if I do what step 10 tells me to do, I will stay sober in this moment. And then step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Where else is God? It's such a great question. Where else is God? Where else am I looking for God? If I'm not looking for him somewhere else, why not? Because he's done all of this literally miraculous work to get me here, but now I'm not going to talk to him about this relationship or about this job or about the family situation or the court. See, I can't negotiate recovery anymore. I can't say to God, look, man, you take the drugs and the alcohol, but I'm going to keep the women and the money.
No, snap.
Like I can't, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way, right? I have a dear friend of mine, his name was Jacob. Jacob used to ask, what is today's agnosticism? What's the one thing today that you're not talking to God about? Because there's got to be something. Because I'm selfish. I'm an addict. I'm a human being. I want to have something. Whatever that thing is that I'm not talking to God about, that's the thing that I'm probably struggling with, right? Because I'm not talking to God about it, right? And if I'm going to grow, if I'm going to improve my conscious contact with him, then I'm going to be willing to and try to talk to him about everything. And I'm going to do it a lot. The more that I do that, the better I feel and the better my life is. And again, why did I come here? I came here because I wanted to feel better, and the drugs and alcohol quit working, and nothing else worked either. That's how I got here. And if I do that on a regular basis, I will stay sober. That is the purpose of step 11. And then step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now, there are multiple instructions in here, but I want to be very clear. The goal of step 12 is to keep me sober. You hear people say things like the purpose and the goal of step 12 is to carry the message and help other addicts and alcoholics. It's not true. That is not the goal of step 12. The goal of step 12 is to keep me sober. The instructions are to carry the message. But the instructions are also, and this I want you to pay very close attention to this. If you read this, it says, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, and to practice these principles in all my affairs. That means I got to practice these spiritual principles with my relationships, right? And my money, right? And my work, and my family, and my friends. I have to practice these spiritual principles. If I don't, then that means I'm taking it back and I'm taking control and I'm telling God he's wrong and I'm going to do this my way. And that's kind of alcoholic, isn't it? That's how I got here, wasn't it? And this is designed to keep me sober. That is what it's for. You want to know what just for today is? It's 10, 11, and 12. If you're doing 10, 11, and 12, things are really good. If you're not doing 10, 11, and 12, you probably got something going on. You with me? These are the instructions to get in staying sober. That's what the program is. That's the path. When these people tell you that they're working their path and that they're working their program and that they're working their steps, they're doing this. One of the first epiphanies, actually the very first epiphany that I ever had in 12-step recovery, my first 12-step meeting, like that I paid attention to. We were reading page 64. They were reading the resentments, right? And then they started to share. And this guy said, hey man, like I did my inventory, but this one thing keeps coming up and I keep talking to my sponsor about it and it won't go away and I don't know what to do. And somebody else jumped in and said, well, dude, if you did the inventory and then you keep 10-stepping it, but it won't go away, then you need to go and write another inventory and put it back on paper again and take another look at it because you're missing something. And in that moment, I got it. Oh, they do the steps more than once. Oh, this program's cyclic. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. See, I thought that I was going to do 12 things and my life was just going to get better. Like, are you insane? Do you know who I am? That's not going to work.
How that goes.
We live the steps. We live the program. We do this constantly. I'm always working steps. If I run out of steps to work, I am in trouble. Because I'm always going to be an addict and alcoholic. That's not going to change. And so what am I going to do? You with me? Question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
What's the, when it says we tried to carry this message,
Mhm.
I feel like tried means something or like
That's
why?
Well, that's a great question. First of all, there's 1,000 ways to carry the message. There's a popular, I don't want to say misconception, but the default interpretation of that is to go and sponsor someone. Which once you've completed the 12 steps, they're going to make you sponsor someone, but we highly recommend that you sponsor people. Because the level of accountability there changes completely. It goes from my sponsor asked me to call him, to this guy's calling me. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, damn, I gave this guy my number and he called me. I better pick up that phone. Like, it changes. But I'm trying to carry the message. I'm just trying to tell you or anybody else that there's a different way. There's a different way. And there's 1,000 ways to do that. You can share a meeting. You can sponsor someone. You can go put your hands on a newcomer. You know? One of the best ways that I can tell you to get involved. Matter of fact, you're leaving, aren't you? You're leaving. Like, oh no, you're leaving. Oh, you're leaving. Yeah. Okay, so that first meeting that you go to, you want to ask them if you can be a greeter. They may not even have that service position available. Ask them if you can do it. And you get to that meeting 30 minutes early, and everybody that you don't know, you go and say hi to them and introduce yourself, and you welcome to the meeting. And see how quickly you build a network and meet a ton of people and build friendships and relationships. And in the process, you're going to inadvertently carry the message because there's hope. We're trying to carry the message. That's all we're trying to do. You with me? All right. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. It's okay. But to consciously choose not to do this when I know it works, that's on me. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Now, I'm going to climb back up on my soapbox for a minute. If you've been here a while, or if you've been in recovery for a while, at some point somebody threw progress, not perfection out there, right? I hate that. It drives me nuts. Because the book doesn't say that. The book doesn't say progress, not perfection. Progress is broadly defined. I have more money now than I've ever had before in my life. Well, I stopped buying drugs and alcohol. I mean, so yeah, that's progress, but like, let's be careful, right? You know, I'm talking to multiple people right now in possible relationships. Is that progress? Right? I'm an addict and alcoholic. I have 5 leather jackets. Like, that's a true story. I actually have 5 leather jackets because if one's good, then 5's better, right? Like, is that progress? Like, let's be real for a minute here, okay? We need to be careful about that, which is why when people throw progress, not perfection, it's a crutch. It's a crutch to lean on so I can keep screwing something up. It's progress, not perfection. No, that's not what the book says. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Am I growing towards God? Where is God in this? If I can't find God in this, that means I'm probably not bringing him into it, and that's a problem. You with me? Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, right, that chapter about God, and our personal adventures, anybody in here got any personal adventures? Our personal adventures, before and after, make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. I'm going to stop here for a minute. I have a question. I ask this to all my newcomers. Is your life unmanageable because you are powerless over drugs and alcohol? No. Right. My life is unmanageable because I'm not good at this thing called life.
Right.
Right. My life is unmanageable because left to my own devices, I put myself in a place where I'm going to go get high again because I don't know what else to do. And I don't like the way things are going, and I'm uncomfortable in my skin, and I don't like you. Right? See, if the answer to that question was yes, then this line would say that we were alcoholics, so we could not manage our own lives. It doesn't say that. It says that we are alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. I got a problem with drugs and alcohol, and I ain't real good at this thing called life. And my reaction to not being real good at this thing called life is to go get loaded. And that's killing me. And it's killing everybody else around me, and I don't want to do that anymore. So not only am I going to put the drugs and alcohol down, but then I'm going to go and seek a spiritual solution. Right? Abstinence followed by the 12 steps. That's what we're talking about here, right? That probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. They ain't going to save you. Whoever they is, your husband, boyfriend, partner, kids, mom, dad, they ain't going to save you. And you ain't going to stop getting high for them. Because if you were, you wouldn't be here. That's the bottom line. And that's hard to accept and admit, but that's the truth. It's got to be something bigger. It's got to be God. And then C, that God could and would if he were sought. I can break this entire book. I can take all 200 pages. I can break this entire book down to 2 words. Seek God. When I'm seeking God, my life is good. And I'm not getting loaded. When I'm not seeking God, I don't know. Now, since this is not everybody's first rodeo, I can ask another question. You know, I've heard about 1,000 or more relapse stories. Everybody in this room's got 100 relapse stories, right? Every relapse story that I've ever heard starts also with 2 words. I stopped. I stopped calling my sponsor. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped praying. I stopped helping people. I stopped doing all the things that were working. And then I started getting loaded again. You know, one of the things that you hear about a lot in recovery is relapse prevention, right? You don't hear it as much here as you do in other places, but relapse prevention is this wonderful phrase that gets thrown around, right? You want relapse prevention in 4 words? Seek God. Don't stop. It can't be that simple, though, can it? Right?
That's not even simple.
It's actually that simple. We make it wildly difficult, which is why we need a list of instructions and a 200-page instruction book. And that's how it works. So my name's Lehman Alcoholic. That's what I got for you today.
Thank you.